Welcome back to our technology series here on the show. Today I have Ekaterina from Intento with me, and I'm very happy to go into the depths of Intento, what's about together with you. Ekaterina, thanks to be on the show. Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Jan. I'm very happy to be here. So my name is Ekaterina, and I'm the Vice President of Global Customer Success here at Intento. Very happy to share today what we're all about and how we can help our customers get the best out of machine translation and AI revolution that we're all currently observing and being part of, hopefully.
Excellent. Let's dive into it. So what is, Intento? What's the mission of Intento? How do you start?
Yeah, that's a good question to start. Not broad or philosophical at all. Thank you. So what Intento is here for is to help large enterprises make sure that language barrier is basically not a language barrier for them, not a barrier for them. What we say we do is we provide language experience. What we mean by that is we want to make sure that wherever you have your customers or your employees, when they are interacting with the message or the content that you're providing, they're getting exactly the same experience as if it was initially produced in their own native language. So we're not just talking about translation, we're talking about the general experience again. We're trying to make sure that it doesn't matter where you have your customers. It doesn't matter if, let's say, your marketing team has produced some materials in English, but then the audience that you're trying to reach is Japanese speaking. We want to make sure that they are still getting exactly the same experience as the one that people, let's say, in the Netherlands would get, reading the same materials or interacting, let's say, with your website, with your community, whatever it is that you're using to reach your customers. So that's pretty much the experience we're trying to provide.
So we're talking about machine translation, AI-powered translation, and not human translation, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So when we talk about machine, what kind of clients would use Intento to work with you and to give their this experience to their users?
Ideally, I would say that pretty much any client can use, any type of client can use machine translation. However, when we talk about Intento, what we think about is what is the type of customers who would get the biggest value, the biggest return on investment from our solution. And in this case, we're talking mainly about large multinational enterprises. And there are two reasons for it, two, let's say, large challenges that we're helping these type of customers solve. Number one is if you are a very large enterprise company and you have invested a lot of time, years, maybe decades, into developing your own brand voice, then you usually have extremely specific requirements about how exactly your voice should sound, how exactly your content should look like. And not only do you have a lot of very specific requirements towards, let's say, tone of voice and terminology that you're using. Another thing is that most of these requirements will be extremely unique to your particular company, which means that out-of-the-box solutions are probably not going to cut it for you. So that's challenge number one, which is very specific to enterprise companies. Challenge number two is related to the sheer scale of various languages and various markets you're operating in. If you only work within two markets, let's say you produce content in English and then you mainly target it towards French users, then in most cases, you might be fine, again, putting for a minute aside the whole first point of having very specific requirements, but you might be fine with getting a good level machine translation with just one provider. Because there must be some providers who historically train their data mainly on, let's say, English to French language pair, and they work fine with it. Usually also if they work within a specific domain or very general domain, this is fine. If you're a huge multinational company and you have customers or employees all over the world, it means that you need to work with a high number of language pairs. In many cases, you will work with a lot of domain. And I don't know, Jan, what your experience has been, but for my experience, there are some machine translation vendors who will be really, really good in translating, for example, from English into Slavic languages, because that's where they originate from. They work with these languages. And then there will be some who are extremely good with Japanese, and some which work mainly with European languages, but they do it brilliantly. So again, if you just have one market you're addressing, if you just need to translate within one language pair, pick this provider who is best for translating within this particular language pair, and you're fine. However, if you try to apply this, let's say, mainly European languages targeted provider to translating from an easy one would be English into Chinese. What if it's you're translating from Korean into Chinese? That's where the same provider will struggle, even though another provider would be just fine with it. And this is kind of the gap that we're helping you bridge. And we're not just doing it magically, automatically. We actually have a combination of technology that allows you to address this all from a single interface that will build in seamlessly into whichever technical setup you're currently using. We're not asking you to take away everything that you have built for your localization and put us instead. We'll actually add a layer on top of this. But not only technology. What we also have, and what I'm extremely proud of, is that our internal teams of our AI engineers, of our computational linguists, of our linguistic analysts are the people who will actually help you make a data-driven decision about which providers, which translation engines will work best for specific language pairs based on your specific data or based on best practices if for some reason this is not an option. And this is how you will go. So basically now you don't have any trouble with thinking, okay, which provider should I use for this specific location and which provider should I use for this specific stream of content, which is a completely different domain. Let's say it's legal, which means it requires a completely different terminology and tone of voice. We will have you covered in a very customized way. We will hold your hand through this. We will get to hands on shoulders at some point, and then you will just have this whole ecosystem for your localization for all your language needs.
Got you. So in this point, you enter as a customer success manager with your team to help them guide. How's the onboarding process? I mean, what you mentioned in your description is that the people or the companies who want to work multilingual use different engines instead of one engine like Google Translate for everything in order to personalize, to customize the outputs, to get your glossaries in there. Now, how do you help with your team, your clients in this onboarding process? And what kind of problems do you normally face or they face?
I would say that we do not just start with my team. It would be all very nice and easy if you just could bring in the customer success manager, sprinkle a little bit of technical support on top of this, and everybody is fine. However, when we talk about enterprise customer journey, enterprise user journey, we don't just start with, okay, you bought the solution, plug it in, everybody's happy. Because our solution is so customizable, we actually start in the very beginning. So this happens before the actual sale. Am I even allowed to say sale, or are we getting a little bit too, commercial with this? If not, but whenever we start the first conversation with a potential customer at this point, the first thing we have to do is scope out their particular needs, because again, circling back to the point that everybody's need is extremely unique and extremely different. So first, we will need to understand which language pairs are you working with? What kind of challenges are you trying to solve with these language pairs? Why are you looking for a possible solution? Why are you not just using something very simple, like, as you said, Google Translate? Probably it's not cutting it for you, but in which way? So first we need to do a complete scoping. After that is done, we'll recommend you a solution. And that's usually when our AI curation team comes into play, because what they can do for you for each specific language pair and sometimes for each specific domain that you're using, they will run a very in-depth analysis for a large number of various machine translation engines. Now we're also including LLMs into this scope of analysis as well. And they will pair your specific language pairs and your specific domains to the best possible engine for each of these for each of these very particular use cases. They will provide you not only this is the number one translation engine, they will also provide you with the next best engine. Why it is important? Because this way we're eliminating the problem of what if this one particular translation provider goes down for 5 minutes and you're dealing with real-time translation, or you're dealing with translating your customer support interactions and they can't afford to wait for when they are back on. So what we'll also provide you is a recommendation for a failover provider. So you don't randomly switch to whatever it is, you switch to the next best engine. After that, we will have a project manager assigned to you so that they help you turn these ideal scenario. Here are all the best engines, here is how it works, here is your, let's say, translation management system. You might be using one. We are integrating with all the major translation management systems, or maybe you need a plugin in your website. So wherever you are, we'll meet you there. And your project manager will actually help you turn this into reality. Make sure that we set up all the routings depending on which language you're using, which domain you're using. Make sure that if you need it as a website translator, it works exactly as it should work, and you are providing the best possible experience for the customers who are visiting this website. And that's what will be happening. After that, once you're up and running, that's when you will get your customer success manager who will be working with you on how do you make sure that you're getting the ultimate value out of this solution you have just invested into. And this can take a lot of different forms. We can help you with making sure that the users within your organization are all on board, know that that's where they go now if they need something translated quickly. We can also make sure that we share some best practices. Yes, each customer's requirements are extremely customized and extremely unique. That doesn't mean that best practices do not exist. So we will help you with that. And we'll pretty much be there for you. You will have a single point of contact whenever you need some help, some assistance. Both on the technical side, for that we obviously have a customer support team who are very experienced in localization specifically, who are ready to work with a very specific requirements in very specific cases. But you will also have this customer success manager who helps you with any practical best practice adoption type challenges or aspirations that you have. Basically, their main goal is to make sure that you get your return on investment and you understand how to measure it, how to get there. And then you will still have our linguistic team. We can provide you with this language maintenance, linguistic maintenance. So you know how machine translation works, and you know that it's the biggest challenge with setting expectations always, because basically whenever you get machine translation, you will always be striving to get as close to human like translation as possible. And sometimes you will be finding some tiny things that don't go exactly the way you would expect them to go. That's just the nature of machine translation. But the beauty of it is once you get it, you can tweak the machine translation a little bit. You can customize it, you can frame it. Or in some cases, you might even find out that, okay, it looks like this particular engine might not be fitting your needs anymore because they also evolve, they also change. And then we might give you a recommendation, okay, let's switch to this other one, which just recently rolled out a new update and actually fit this case best.
Because you're monitoring all the engines all the time, you have the report, the annual, biannual machine translation report, where you get the best of class
we do have the report. We do give you the best of class. this part where anybody can actually access the wealth of the knowledge that our linguistic teams have. So usually, in order to get some insights from them, you would have to be our customer. And obviously, in this case, they will be working with you on customizing it to your specific case
Absolutely.
and sharing this knowledge based on what you need. However, if you are just curious because you're in the industry and you want to better understand what's in this year, then I absolutely recommend to go and Google for the State of Machine Translation report that we publish every year, where we study dozens of different translation engines. And as I said, now we also do it with LLMs who are very quickly making their way towards the machine translation landscape. Very true. And you will see all the results, not customized, but universal in terms of we're observing that these particular engines are working best with these particular domains. I think we're now doing about 9 or 10 different domains, like legal, software, IT, colloquial, and a number of different domains. And you will see how each translation engine ranks for all of these. You will see how we're applying our own linguistic quality metric to this, which is very transparent, very easy to understand. So it's a great read. I would definitely.
I can absolutely recommend this reading. It's always when it comes out, everybody download. So it's a very good reading.
And the cool thing is, these are exactly the same people who will be working in a very particular way to customize your translations to your particular needs. If you choose to go with Intento, if you choose to help us make your machine translation as great as possible.
That sounds excellent. One more question before we have to wrap up. What is the relation between human translation and machine translation and the integration of Intento?
I would ask you to rephrase this question a little bit just to understand what you mean by relation.
Okay, so when I'm a big company and I have a human translation workflow, localization workflow with my vendors and so on, how do I get in Intento? How does it fit in? What is the relation between your services you provide and the typical services provided by an LSP, for example?
I see. In many cases, we'll see a combination of both, because the way it usually goes with machine translation in the vast majority of cases is that you use machine translation for preparing, let's say, a draft of the translation. And then usually you have a little bit of the human effort to work on the post-editing. And in the ideal world, you want to make sure that you spend as little time on post-editing as possible. Because in most cases, there are much better translation jobs that you would ideally want humans to do than do things like correct for gender forms, correct for whether or not some phrasing fits your style guide, and all these things which are extremely instructable, so to say. So up until now, I would say that was something that was a big challenge, and it was, let's say, a ceiling that you couldn't overcome, break, however you call it, because you could only get the machine translation so good. And even with all the possible improvements, all the possible automatic post-editing, that would still require a little bit of human involvement. I would say that the situation has changed drastically with the introduction of LLMs, obviously. So one of the biggest directions in which we're moving right now, and we have some customers who are already getting value out of it, is what we can introduce is we can introduce an extra layer of an AI agent, let's put it this way, who will actually help you with all these little, relatively routine things that you don't get humans excited about, like, again, correcting for the gender forms, correcting for the tone of voice, working with specific dialects, all these things that are absolutely necessary. These are the barriers between you fully automating your machine translation usually and your current state. Application of the right glossaries, but then also using morphological forms, what a pain in the had, any kind of glossary application would be whenever you work with languages which are morphologically diverse, let's put it this way. So what we're doing right now is we are making sure that your post-editing distance, that the amount of time that your human translators need to spend on retranslating in the worst case scenario, or very boringly editing in the best case scenario, that this time is as little as possible, so that your translators can actually do things like transcreation. They can do something much more interesting, much more exciting, while we will take care of everything else. So I would say that this proportion is constantly shifting. It's also very different for different industries. I know there are some highly regulated industries where you are absolutely not allowed to let any content see the world without a human checking it first.
Yeah.
But then again,
Medical.
you will see, pharma, all this kind. But then again, the question is, how much time do you want the human to actually spend on this? Because even now, with all the, not all, I can probably speak for everyone, but with a high number of major enterprises spending billions probably on translation, and with all these enterprises putting more than 90% of their content into machine translation, they still spend the majority of their translation budget on human post-editing, just because of the nature of how it works. So this is the disproportion that we are looking to correct in the future. This is the disproportion where we want to make sure that your human translators are free to do what's exciting and what's interesting and what's something that cannot in any way be replicated by machine translation, not the minor post-editing or major post-editing, which is super instructable. Here is the style guide. Make sure that each word in this content is a style guide. I don't think anybody gets excited over it, unless you do it with AI, in which case it's super exciting.
Yeah. The future is definitely going to be very interesting. We will see this merge between AI and human translation, how it comes. Intento is one of the biggest players in our market. So I'm super happy to follow suit, to see how the evolution of Intento is. And together with you guys, see practical examples to see how it works out, how we can make best use of machine translation and the AI revolution that is on the words. So, Ekaterina, thanks a lot for being here. I think today we have had a great introduction into Intento. Thanks a lot for explaining it. And I'm looking forward to continue our conversation in future episodes.
I'm looking forward to making sure we dive into some really specific cases and we show you how it actually works. So thanks for having me here. Thanks for having my colleagues here in the future.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.